Earnings calls are kind of long, filled with fluff and oftentimes audio issues, which is why in today's video I was hoping to just kind of recap the top 5 biggest things we got from yesterday's earnings call, things that I think should have been highlighted, and I know a lot of you just want Cybertruck info, so at least I would pick that out from the call. But number 1 definitely has to be Elon putting a firm date on the Robotaxi volume production. So it absolutely says a lot about how confident they are that FSD is going to be safer than a human, later this year or next year, because they're willing to actually make plans and start mass production of a vehicle that does not have a steering wheel, does not have pedals. Elon said it would be very futuristic looking and different from most other cars, and that they want to start production of it in 2024 with some kind of meaningful volume. So they still have not clarified where it's going to be built, and when asked when we would get more information about this vehicle, Elon said that they would probably have an event for it sometime next year. So this is not something to look forward to in the next couple months, but before they had just referenced making a Robotaxi vehicle, and now they're actually giving more of a date on when they expect to produce it and when they want to unveil it. I personally have my doubts that FSD is going to be ready by then, so I personally don't think this is going to happen, but at least we now know what deadline Tesla is setting for themselves internally, and they're comfortable sharing that with everyone. But okay, enough Robotaxi talk. The most interesting word, in my view, that was dropped during this call was the fact that they claimed Cybertruck will be entering volume production in 2023. Before, they had just said that, they want to start deliveries of the Cybertruck next year. Now they're saying with actual, meaningful volume, not just an early ramp up, they want to be producing Cybertrucks next year. So we may be looking too much into the weeds on this one. It was possible that that was just maybe a little slip up and they actually meant low production units, but depending on how quickly they ramp up the 4680 batteries and the Model Y at Giga Texas, which during this earnings call they said should take between 9 and 12 months to fully ramp up. They even mentioned that thanks to their learnings from ramping up Giga Shanghai, the ramps for Giga Berlin and Giga Texas should be even faster. As much as I have my doubts and I've been pessimistic about the Cybertruck in the past, based on the last earnings call, it sounds like they're fairly serious about it hitting streets in 2023. Hopefully they stay true to that one and there's not more supply chain issues, but yeah, this is evident that they do want to build the Cybertruck at pretty high volume next year. The other tidbit of new Cybertruck info that we hadn't heard before was when an investor asked a question about Tesla switching to the 800-volt architecture. Other EVs have already made that switch, which is basically an upgrade to the internal wiring of vehicles, and with 800 volts, you can get a lot more efficiency and faster charging, and basically their explanation was that for smaller vehicles like the Model 3 and Model Y, it doesn't actually save them that much, and there's not a ton of benefits for it. But Drew Baglino did mention that the Tesla Semi and the Cybertruck, which are fairly large, mass-sensitive vehicles that are going to need heavy, dense nickel in the cathode and are going to need longer range despite having a very high starting weight, it'll make more sense to go with 800 volt for those vehicles. So there's even some people speculating that because of how massive the Tesla Semi is, it might even make more sense to do a kilovolt on that particular truck, which would be amazing, especially because they're probably going to need to charge them at 1 megawatt or 1.5 megawatts, just simply because of how massive the battery pack is on the inside. And I still expect fairly massive battery packs on the Cybertruck as well, but essentially this would help a lot with the electric pickup truck's efficiency, affordability, and the charging curve of the Cybertruck, which is very, very important for moving a vehicle of that size a great distance. So we didn't really know if Tesla was planning an 800 volt architecture for the Cybertruck. Now it seems fairly likely. They didn't say 100% they had decided on it, but they did allude to the concept of, yeah, for a vehicle like the Cybertruck, that's where you would want 800 volts. And because it's not in production now, I assume that means 800 volts will find its way onto the Cybertruck. Number 4 was kind of a shocking bit of information that we got from the shareholder deck that I was honestly not anticipating myself, but under the section where they talk about Giga Texas now starting deliveries, they mentioned that, okay, right now they're using 4680 structural battery packs in the Model Ys, which is, of course, building the standard range all-wheel drive model, but they said later in the year they have plans of building 2170 Model Ys with non-structural battery packs. So this tells me a lot about how the production ramp for the 4680 battery is actually going, because it implies that they don't plan on just only building 4680 Model Ys out of Giga Texas. This implies that maybe the run rate for 4680 cells is somewhat low, or maybe the affordability argument makes a ton of sense for the standard range Model Y, but Tesla for making performance Model Ys or making long-range Model Ys. They want to keep using the exact same engineering and cells that they're using for the Fremont-made Model Ys, which is a little bit weird. My prediction would have been that later in the year, when 4680s are more ramped, then they would start offering a performance Model Y with like 340, 350 miles of range. And sure, it can be more expensive, but I was not thinking that Giga Texas would just be building, you know, standard range Model Ys forever, but I was assuming that 4680 would go in the cars as long as they're coming out of that factory. Now it's seeming like 2170s might play a fairly large role in our future, more so than we think. As far as we're aware right now, the 4680 Model Y is just going to be in the standard range, and it seems like there's no intention on bringing that to a higher range version of the Model Y anytime soon. This is actually a little bit more bearish on the Cybertruck timeline because it implies that Tesla is unable to build 4680s at a high enough rate to expand it into more vehicles, or perhaps it's just cheaper and easier for Tesla to keep on using 2170 cells, but Tesla hasn't said they want to build their own, so that would mean shipping more 2170 cells from the Reno factory out to Texas. Just kind of a little bit weird wording on their part, and I'd love to hear more about their plans for the 4680, but we know for a fact the Cybertruck needs those batteries, so maybe perhaps more on the bullish timeline for the Cybertruck, they don't want to use more 4680s on the Model Y than they have to because they would rather stockpile up those batteries so that they can get the Cybertruck into production. Maybe that's the more optimistic way of viewing things. And number 5 was something that Tesla has not actually given a concrete number on in previous earnings calls over the past couple years, but Elon said despite the factory shutdowns at Giga Shanghai, they still feel confident that they're going to be able to exceed 1.5 million vehicles delivered this year, which is amazing considering it's over 50% higher than how many vehicles they delivered in 2021. So I previously reported on the shutdowns and how I thought they would make a pretty sizable dent into Q2. Elon is saying that in Q2 they should probably build around the exact same number of vehicles as they did in Q1. That's a lot better than I was expecting. I thought it would go down because, you know, they had mentioned Giga Shanghai was their highest producing factory, running at the fastest speed, and now it's been shut down for several weeks, but it's slowly starting to reopen again, just not quite at max capacity yet. But finding out that they still expect to beat 1.5 million by the end of the year is great news. I'm very excited about that. And yes, Elon also talked about how the Tesla bot is going to change Tesla forever as a whole fundamentally, but I've just been hearing so many promises from him about FSD and AI being able to achieve these miraculous things, and we still haven't really seen those miraculous things happen yet. So that's why I think there's a lot of people being pessimistic and doubtful of the Tesla bot, because the AI and machine learning the bot is going to have to figure out is far more complicated than robotaxis, and Tesla doesn't even have the robotaxi thing figured out yet. Yes, there's a lot of progress in improvements with FSD beta, but I definitely have not seen a single drive with FSD beta that has convinced me like, oh, okay, the system's done, it's ready, let's roll this thing out to the masses. It's gonna be a while, and I think they should be more realistic on timelines. Let me know what your biggest takeaways were from the earnings call down below. Thank you to everyone supporting the channel over on Patreon. We just crossed the $45,000 mark in the Tesla Fund, which has me super duper pumped. Incredibly grateful to everyone supporting us over there, as well as just watching these videos. It seriously helps out a ton. Take care and have a great day.